Hello. Tony Blair's recent assertion that the continuing threat of international conflict means UK armed forces need to be war fighters as well as peacekeepers suggests many more of our troops will be put in harm's way in the coming years. But are we looking after our troops when they're injured in the line of duty? There were more than 3,000 casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan last year alone. And there's a growing chorus saying that medically discharged soldiers are not receiving the care they feel they're entitled to. Tim Hugh reports.
For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and chuck him out, the brute. But it's saviour of his country when the guns begin to shoot. And it's Tommy this and Tommy that and anything you please. And Tommy ain't a bloomin' fool. You bet that Tommy sees.
In battle they were heroes. Back home they feel like nobodies. Kipling reported that sense of injustice from the trenches of the First World War. It was expressed just as acutely this weekend in Trafalgar Square by veterans of the Falklands and Bosnia, Afghanistan and Iraq. As part of a BBC documentary, they put up a temporary statue, not to a dead comrade, but to a living one, a young soldier injured in Iraq, who represents, they say, all those denied proper care by the country they served.
I actually thought I was dead because all I could see was blue sky. I had no sensation other than the fact I could see blue sky. I had injuries to my spine, my knees, my shoulders. I had some internal injuries that have affected my bowels, my bladder and my stomach. Then within 24 hours I was sent over to Cyprus and then from Cyprus on to the UK. And the treatment up to that point I thought was actually very good. But when I got back to the UK, I was basically taken to A&E in the middle of the night in Selly Oak in Birmingham. Eventually handed a walking stick and told to go home and see the GP.
Scott Garthley, wounded on the first day of the invasion of Iraq, would later need 17 surgical operations, all paid for privately because he says the NHS waiting list was too long. That wouldn't have happened, he believes, if there'd been a military hospital available. But 7 of the 8 remaining in Britain have closed since the early 1990s, and the last in Gosport will follow shortly. The move to treat soldiers in the NHS follows the recommendation of a Conservative government defence review in 1994, though Britain's been involved in ever more overseas conflicts since then. And many men wounded in earlier wars, like Denzel Connick, who lost his left leg in the Falklands, never stop needing specialised treatment.
The pain that I have at the moment is caused through a nerve which has become exposed in the stump remaining of my leg. It's very, very painful and causes me a lot of lack of sleep. The pain is ridiculous. I've been waiting now for over 7 months to see a specialist, a neurosurgeon, who would be looking at the possibility of surgery to treat it.
The services of the dead are engraved in stone. The wounded only have bits of paper to enshrine their rights. This document is supposed to ensure priority treatment for war pensioners on the NHS. But veterans say that since a change in legislation a couple of years ago, pensions are increasingly hard to obtain. And there's evidence that the NHS doesn't always observe these guidelines.
Well, the main change for us in terms of how war pensions are paid is that the burden of proof has now changed. Whereas in the old war pension scheme, the claimant was given quite a lot of reasonable doubt. The claimant now has to claim on the balance of probabilities that their injury or illness has been caused from service.
The Army still has a specialised rehabilitation centre for men wounded in battle, but the introduction of the new pension system has led to a 4-fold increase in the proportion of claims rejected. And many hospitals have made clear that despite the law, even those who do have a war pension won't necessarily get priority treatment in the NHS.
When people are presenting to the NHS, they are simply being told that we base our priority on clinical need.
If somebody has a life-threatening condition that needs immediate treatment, that person must go to the top of the list, and quite rightly so. However, that's no consolation for people who fought for their country and requires treatment for their conditions that have been caused through that service when they're put on waiting lists which just drag on and drag on.
Did you have to put these characters back together again?
Selly Oak Hospital in Birmingham, where Prince Charles has visited wounded veterans, has been treating returning soldiers alongside civilians, but it's now going to have a unit with military nurses and military managers at all levels. That'll please veterans who say injured servicemen are more comfortable in a military setting, but they'll still be treated by NHS medical staff.
You all have stood up.
The demand among many veterans, though, is for a return to military hospitals, not just for current servicemen, but also for those who've been medically discharged. But for ex-servicemen and women like these, it's not just a question of adequate facilities, it's also a matter of respect.